All right. Looks like everyone's here, so why don't we get started?
Great, we'll get started. I will start with roll call.
Okay,
Chair Alvarado,
I'm here.
thank you, and Director Weiner.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Next item is public comment, items not on the agenda. I do not have any public comment from items not on the agenda.
All right, so why don't we go to the next item?
Next item are the minutes. Approve the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 Infrastructure Operations and Environment Committee meeting.
Okay,
I move the minutes.
I'll second them.
Thank you. Next item, status update. Provide update on the North Richmond Storm Station.
All right, who's got that?
Good morning. Andrew, go ahead.
You got it, Aaron.
Good morning, Aaron Weiner. Where am I this morning? Water Quality and Resource Recovery Department. I'm a little excited. Good morning, Director Alvarado and Director Weiner and Claire and everybody else. A little excited this morning. We've got some good news on some projects here at the plant and at the treatment plant that you know about. And I just wanted to, before I jump into the North Richmond Pump Station update, give you a brief update on those projects, if that's okay with you.
Sure, go right ahead.
So the biggie is just to jog your memory a little bit. Last year, we talked several times about new effluent pumps, which you approved to the tune of about $100,000 a piece. And we're at the end stages of that project. And I got this email this morning and this picture of 2 of the 5 pumps, which are going to be delivered in the next, and should arrive here in the next 2 weeks.
Ain't they pretty?
Excuse me?
Great.
I said, ain't they pretty?
Yeah, they're nice ones. So I just wanted to provide you that update. The original installation and target date was March 20 for delivery, and we're on track. So our hope is to have these 2 pumps installed by, say, the first week of April, which would have the trickle-down effect of allowing us to decommission the temporary effluent pumping station, which we've talked about ad nauseum over the last year. So that was really what I wanted to share with you outside of the North Richmond pump station thing. One more update. There's also a plant security gate that we've been talking about that you may recall. It was destroyed a little over a year ago by a driver, and that project is also kicking off early next week. It'll take about 2 weeks to install our new plant security gate. So just wanted to provide those updates before we jump into the North Richmond pump station update. Any questions for me about either of those things?
Director Weiner, any questions?
I have none.
Neither do I. Let's move on.
So I'm going to jump right into the North Richmond pump station, storm pump station update. And if it's okay with you, Brenda, I've got the slideshow on my desktop, and I'm just going to open it up if it's okay. Everybody see that okay?
Not quite yet. Okay, there we go. I got it.
Did you see the screen change?
Yes,
I
we can
did.
see it.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. Welcome to the update on the North Richmond Storm Pump Station. So just real briefly before I jump into the presentation, which has most of this information, I'll try to make it quick. There's only 16 or 18 slides. We have operated this stormwater pump station for the county and the city for coming up on 40 years. And just generally, you may recall that a couple of years ago, early to mid 2019, the storm station was in such disrepair that it was posing a risk to our staff and a risk to the organization to continue to operate it because it was in such poor shape. One of the directors asked us probably in mid 2020 to come back at some point and provide an update on where we are and where the county and the city of Richmond are with the upgrades, and that's why we're here today. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in from there. And you can't see the slides changing, right?
Yes,
Yes, we
Little
can.
bit. Okay, thanks. A little bit of background. The system was built in 1974 by the county to provide flood protection. You'll see a slide a little bit later on that shows the general area that is serviced by this pump station. JPA was executed on April 16, 1974 between the county and the city of Richmond. And you can see the cost split there for O&M at 39 and 61%. The pump station was maintained by San Pablo Sanitary District until it was no longer San Pablo Sanitary District and changed to West County. And we operated on behalf of the county after it was built. So the first agreement was executed between West County and the county in 1981. And it's been about 40 years. And the agreement that we operate under, and this is another thing we'll talk about a little bit later on, is, it's antiquated, I guess is a good word for it. And that's one of the things that we'll be looking at in the next year for this pump station and the two other contract pump stations that we operate, is updating and standardizing those agreements. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, over the past decade, the condition of the pump station deteriorated due to the lack of capital replacements. And really that was partly driven by, we have an O&M agreement with the county and city, or a loose agreement, I should say. But basically it was for labor hours and some minimum of repairs that were passed through when they were completed as necessary. The problem was with the station itself, there was no capital plan. There was really no plan on the part of the owners to upgrade the facilities over time. And as you can see in that last bullet, the original pump station design was inherently unsafe. There were, and as I note there, that's largely due to the design specifications of the time. And I'll give you an example. The downstairs, the first level, which is right up, it's actually a wet well with the storm channels run through. They were not well ventilated. So any hazardous atmosphere from sewer gas or whatever that might evolve in there did not ventilate, was not ventilated adequately out of the facility. There were more issues. There were electrical issues and other issues, but that's kind of the long and short of it. It just was not safe. I will also say that most of this deck is pictures. Is just one or two more history slides, and then we'll get into the pictures. So in March 2019, as I think I mentioned a little bit earlier as well, the board authorized the GM to terminate the pump station JPA if it was determined to be in the best interests of the district and its residents. And I think it's important to note that I think most of the residents that are served by this pump station are also our ratepayers and residents within the service area. So in mid 2019, a letter was sent to the county, and basically we told them we'd give them a year, see what happened in a year, and that's what we did. By late 2019, the pump station was down to one operating pump, and it wasn't reliable necessarily. So that was right about the time, a couple of months after Andrew and I started. So these issues were brought to my attention and Andrew's attention, and we went and toured the facility, and I can safely say it was ugly. And I have a lot of experience with ugly wastewater and stormwater facilities. So in January 2020, the city of Richmond granted emergency approval to enter into a contract with Peterson Power to perform the necessary upgrades and install new equipment. West County wastewater staff has continued to operate and maintain through the upgrades. And this is just a little bit more information about what exactly they did. And I'm not going to read it all, but you can see the upgrades there that have been that are being performed, and really at this point in the end stage of completion. I expect within another month, maybe 6 weeks, we'll have the station handed over to us with maybe some minimum of punch list items remaining. So the previous item about the city providing the emergency declaration, that's the second bullet there is the important note that that action allowed to circumvent what would have been the county's 2 to 3 year procurement and construction process. So we'd still be essentially a year to 2 years out if they had not made that declaration. And just a couple more bullets there at the end about permitting and construction completion. So this is a picture I took from the intersection. It's probably about 2 months ago. They were just had some cranes out front and they were installing some equipment on the rooftop. And these are engine coolers that were newly installed on the roof. As you can see, the work is going on there. And so you have these gas-powered engines that you'll see in a minute. They're powered by natural gas, and they have to be cooled. So the exhaust is brought up into these cooling assemblies on the roof. There's a picture of the rebuilt pump pedestals and the engine couplings. The engines connect right to that. If you look at the right-hand picture, there's a drive shaft there, and the engine will couple right to that when it's installed, and you'll see that next or in a minute. This is what the facility looks like. Again, this was about 6 weeks ago when they were still pulling in the new engines and equipment. But I think one of the things to point out here, can you see my cursor? This is
Yes.
the old engine on the left. That old blue looking thing is the old engine. And in the center and right, you'll see the new engines, and there's a better picture that'll be coming up. And again, these are natural gas powered, which is a little bit unusual. Most engines and motors now are driven by electric, as you know. So this is a picture of some of the new automation and control. This is basically a computerized, PLC that is tied into the air handling system, and it modulates the amount of ventilation that's going on. You can see there's new ductwork in the middle too. And that's just a little bit more of the rehab ductwork, and you can see that same control. So basically now, when as I understand it, when the front door is open and our staff walks in, it automates or it activates the automation and starts the air handling system. It detects there's human occupancy, and it actually, it goes into an automated mode and starts moving more air out of the system, and especially on the first floor. At least that's my understanding. My understanding will become more clear as we move forward and I get more familiar with that station at some point. And this is a picture of the first floor. The previous pictures we were looking at were on the second floor where the engines are. This is down below on the first floor. You can't really see it very well. I don't know if there's a real good picture. That black, you can see that black muffler, the engine muffler on the bottom. They were just storing them here for the time being. Sorry, I thought I had a picture of the flow, but the actual water channels here, if you can see my cursor on the right-hand side, these are gates, and they go down into these channels, and the actual stormwater runs through those channels and pushed out into channels and pipes on the other side, which would be on the left of this building on the outside. And as I mentioned earlier, part of the problem with an atmosphere or a building like this open to these channels, without adequate ventilation and air handling, whatever nasty stuff comes through those water channels and goes into the atmosphere it could be problematic to staff. So as noted also, that situation has been resolved by these upgrades. And talked about this a little bit earlier. This is at the intersection of Gertrude So on the right-hand side, this is just a schematic of the surface area from Google Maps or whatever. And this picture is looking down Gertrude from the parkway right here. So this whole area here, if you can see my cursor, is essentially drained by this storm pump station. And I believe that most of the, or all of these residents are also in our sewer service area. So that kind of ties back to the thing that we talked about before, you know, of whether operating this storm station is in the best interests of the district and our residents. And I would say that it is, because the city doesn't operate any of these facilities, and there's nobody in this area that can operate these facilities. I would say, with the exception of Veolia Water, who operates for the, you know, for the city of Richmond, as you know, but it's probably not likely that the city or county would want to pay them what it would cost, you know, for O&M of these facilities. So. And a little bit about fiscal impact, and really this talks a little bit more about the contract and the fact that we're still operating on the, I don't even know, it's really not even a contract, it's a JPA, which, you know, I haven't looked at extensively, but it has some loosely defined, you know, exchange of fees and things for our work. But again, that's something that we have to look at and standardize among the 3 contract operated stations that we have. So you can see that the O&M invoices generally range from a few $1,000s, I'm sorry, to several hundred to several $1,000s for labor, the middle bullet there. And then invoices for parts, materials, excuse me. Service and equipment were much more variable, ranging up to $10,000. And I did look at the invoices over the last couple of years, and really, you know, those higher dollar amounts were, you know, through 2019 and 2018, when the station was in really just complete disrepair and it was almost non-operable. So we were just doing what we could to make repairs to keep the station going. So second to last slide here is next steps. Evaluate the reliability of the storm station post upgrades. And I think, you know, based on everything that I've seen and the extent of these upgrades, I think the county is has shown that they're very committed to doing the upgrades. And I think it's because they know they're necessary, but they also want to make it safe for us to operate and feasible for us to continue operating. Then the second item there is to confirm that continuing O&M of the station is based on reliability is in our best interests. And again, I think you can probably agree that it looks that way, and we'll have to talk about all these things. And the third bullet there just ties to kind of updating the agreements for the pump stations, this one and the other 3 that, or the other 2 rather, that we have. And then negotiating an agreement, and then standardizing with the other 2 stations there, the last bullet. And I think that does it, and we'll open it up for questions.
Director Weiner, any questions, comments?
I have some of both. First of all, it is always great to hear how we are community focused and are actually doing incredible community good. And really, I appreciate all of the efforts that your department has been involved in this regard. I was curious to know, are the lift stations, the other 2 lift stations that you mentioned, are they also wastewater, or are they, I mean, not wastewater, runoff, or are they wastewater?
Actually, those are both sewage or wastewater, Director Weiner. Yeah, we've got the Justice Center, and then the Crockett, the city of Crockett's lift station, pump station. And I'm sure you've heard those
Yeah.
names before.
So would I be safe to say we're lift station experts?
I think yes, and we've got a crew of maintenance staff, and our maintenance staff do most of the O&M. It's mostly maintenance, a very minimum of operations. But I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to be working more to have our operations group and maintenance group expert on those stations and their operations. But in the short answer to your question, which I sometimes struggle with, is yes, we are experts.
And you've mentioned that they were the motors were gas powered. Was
Yep. Yes.
what was the reason for that choice? And I think it's probably a good choice if our future is to create biogas. But what prompted us to go with natural gas versus electricity?
We had no input into that decision. These natural gas engines were installed when the facility was built in the 70s. And so, as I mentioned, the county, built the station and then entered into the JPA with the city. And we came in after the fact, after it was constructed. And they just replaced these engines with the original engines with these like-kind natural gas engines.
I see. So they decided not to convert to electricity.
Right. So from reliability, you don't have to worry about power outages, right? And there is an emergency generator that they're replacing as well as part of this, which I don't think I included in the presentation. So, because you do need lights, even if the gas isn't working, you need the lights, and need to be able to see what's going on in a power outage or an emergency high flow situation.
All in all, I think it's a great project. Thanks for the presentation.
The lighting there is significantly improved as well, Aaron, inside the facility, from what we saw.
Yes. When you and I were there
Yeah.
15 months ago or so, it was bad.
The other thing, like Aaron said, replaced in kind with the gas engines, and we weren't part of that decision, but I do suspect that if they wanted to convert this to electric pumps, it would have been a considerably longer lead time to get these replaced, because they would have had to bring that infrastructure in, that level of electricity. That would have been coordination with PG&E on the long list. And so we were pushing for was we wanted them to get this job done and get it done as soon as they could, which is why they had Richmond do the work instead of the county, as you saw. For whatever reason, the county's process was just incredibly laborious and long.
Okay, any other questions or comments, Director Weiner?
No, that was it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I just have one comment, and to say that this looks like a great thing for us. I mean, I can just see the improvement over the years that I've been on the board. So I would say keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Anything else from staff?
Just on the agreements, Aaron touched on that lightly, but that is something we have, those different agreements with our partners. And like Aaron said, from our initial evaluation of it, it would be our intent to continue in some form of agreement with the county to maintain these, because for the reason that we are the ones in the area with the expertise to maintain these kinds of pumps.
Right.
And it is in our interest to not flood that low-lying area of our district. It's also consistent with the goals of our district to be a partner with our neighboring agencies. And so it just goes a long way in coordinating that. Especially, this also ties in with the work we're trying to do with the living levee and the flooding and other issues that will happen along Wildcat Creek there. There'll be a lot of coordination we're going to have with the county flood control district. So it's, I believe, in our interest to maintain those relationships. And now that we have the new equipment in there, that'll make a huge difference. And that was what our push was before, was we aren't going to continue to maintain this unless you replace these pumps, because it just wasn't safe and they weren't reliable. And it was taking, basically, we were subsidizing the county we were not fully recovering our costs.
So great job. Thank you.
If I could just add one more comment, you reminded me, I'm sorry, through the chair, Chair Alvarado.
Go right ahead.
you reminded me, Andrew, something that I had thought about but had neglected to put into the presentation is, just back to your comment a minute ago about in our interests to, prevent this area from flooding. I mean, if it ever does flood, some part of the storm water that floods back into the area will wind up in our sewer and back into the treatment plant. So it's a great point. Thanks. That's all I had. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Let's move on to the next issue. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Next item is the wastewater resource recovery item, challenges and opportunities from a Danish and Californian perspective.
All right, I believe this is your thing, Dr. Weiner.
Well, it was a couple hours and a lot of speechifying, and it was pretty amazing and historic, because what you're seeing is the state of California being involved in foreign policy. And I'm sure that most states have not taken on the task of doing that.
I'm sure not any states have, but
Yeah, but our state has. And so one of the speakers was the Denmark ambassador. And so there I was watching the ambassador open the discussion. And the point of the first hour was to talk about the collaboration that has been going on for years, actually. This is the second MOU. And it revolves around, excuse me, it revolves around water and wastewater. And one of the most important projects that have been carried on, and this is in collaboration with Stanford, DRAT, should be Cal, was that the Danes have invented a technology for mapping underground mineral composition. And that can be used to determine where groundwater is. So that was one of the big features of the what do you call it, collaboration between us and the Danes. And the state has implemented that and is now currently mapping down to, I think, 100 meters of soil composition. So you can tell where the sand and rocks are versus clay. So you can determine how water flows underground and where it gathers based on the mineral composition. And they use magnetic resonance to determine it. Anyway, fabulous stuff. There's also management of water and wastewater that was discussed, and how the Danes have used their government to push forward wastewater treatment. And so the history of it was in the 70s and the 80s, they they regulated using thresholds on nutrients to protect water resources. By the 90s, they were using economic incentives to stop pollution from coming out of wastewater plants, and they called it green taxes. And this was all around nutrients. And during that time, they were benchmarking industry-wide, they were benchmarking nutrient outflows. So they were gathering, at the same time as they were working on thresholds, et cetera, they were gathering big time data regarding their entire system. And it turns out that California is doing it, but only piecemeal. It's not centralized and it's only voluntary, whereas Denmark did it through regulation, asking wastewater agencies to pass back data to the government so they could benchmark improvements. And at this point, the Danes are almost to energy neutrality. In other words, their wastewater plants produce all the energy required for their operation.
Wow.
And it's done through, well, it's pretty much done through energy recovery of their wastewater stream. And I think we're like headed in the right, well, we're big time, we're bigly headed in the right direction ahead of everybody, because we're replacing our digesters, and part of that process will be energy recovery. So our district is pretty much in the forefront of this right now, which is just incredible to hear and to see verified in a meeting of that, high level importance. The other aspect that was discussed was nutrient recovery. It turns out that while we're in California, we're trying to go to ground application for agricultural purpose. The Danes don't allow it. And yet they take the food waste stream and digest it, and they create a what they call excuse me, I gotta find the word, biopulp. So they have a process before it gets to the wastewater plants who do the digestion of sifting out plastic, etc., and grinding up all the food waste and pumping it. So they've invented pumps that pump food waste. They drop it off at the digesters, and then the digesters produce biogas, and the biogas is where they take the energy to power their plants. And I think the presentation that got me an invitation to this was at CASA, and they described the process of doing this there, and the companies that do it were represented at CASA. I heard from the CASA spokesman, who it was really interesting in the contrast between the Danish approach and our California CASA approach. What were our issues? What were their issues? And all of us who attend CASA are aware. I'm not going to go over our issues versus their issues, but we've all been presented, regarding the chlorinated biphenyls, whatever the hell they're called, the problem that everybody wants to address now, and also our concern with flushable wipes and regulation, how to benchmark, what are the tests, and so forth. So California was a little bit behind the curve on the testing and benchmarking, but benchmarking was like a catchphrase. It was used very often, and I'm not sure where we are in terms of managing our wastewater resources in terms of a benchmarking process. So I haven't heard that word used as a board member. San Francisco PUC is using benchmarking on their core business, and the Danes produce a booklet annually on their benchmarking of their processes, and it's the AWWA benchmarking results. So I'm assuming that if you went and did a Google search on AWWA benchmarking, you could see their annual data. And they're moving into recovering nitrogen beyond the nitrogen that goes into, naturally falls into the biosolids. the liquid portion that is removed, then they further process that to recover nitrogen and the other nutrients that are in it. Oh, and they mentioned SB 1383, which addresses, which is a big interest to, I guess, us, which addresses waste management, climate, and energy goals. So it could be that California will be setting some of those things in using legislation. They also talked about combining waste and wastewater sectors, so that food waste and food waste being one of the collaboration points. So there's that. And yeah, okay. That's my report. I did want to mention that last year I picked up a book called The Drawdown. And The Drawdown was an extensive survey on how greenhouse gases are produced in our worldwide economy. And one of the interesting discoveries from their research was that 1/3 of all pollutants, atmospheric pollutants, CO2, methane, etc., and NO2, 1/3 came from rotting food. And in the first world, it was from food that was thrown away. And the third world, it was food that could not be sent to market because it wasn't, it couldn't be paid for because of market forces of globalization. So big time money in that process. We could, I mean, it could happen that in the future, all the energy and all the gas that's produced naturally from food waste could be recovered and replace natural gas coming from wells. So that's my report.
All right, thank you for that report, Director Weiner. Very concise, very nice. Does staff have any questions or comments? Doesn't seem like anyone does. I don't have any comments or questions.
Okay, I guess that was so boring that no one listened.
I don't think it was boring. I think you covered on a lot of subjects that we had no idea about. You know, obviously this is being done in another country, so it's always nice to hear what's happening over there and how we can improve our systems over here. So I don't think it was boring at all. Thank you for attending. Thank you for doing the work of the committee and the board. And we, the board, or I, as chair of this committee, appreciate it. Thank you. Next item, please.
Did Andrew have something to say?
I did. I can wait till we get to future agenda items. It was related to your presentation, but I can bring it up there.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. Next item.
Okay, next item, reports on issues or matters pertaining to the work of the committee.
I think this is where your comments would be justified, Andrew.
Okay.
I don't think we have future agenda on here.
No, I don't think we specifically do, but this would be it.
Yeah.
Just in response to the food waste that you were referring to, I would like to, as a agenda item for April, come back and provide an update on our comprehensive energy and sustainability upgrades, otherwise known as the ESCO project, the environmental, environmental services contract. At any rate, we want to just go over that with you, talk about the scope again, and talk about where we are in our discussions and negotiations with ENGIE. We continue to comb through that agreement and make some changes and work on the scope. We are altering the scope a little bit based on some of the things that we've been discussing around the digesters and replacements. And so there's a little bit of redesign work, and we're going to do a little bit more upfront work. But one of the things we can also touch on is food waste, and showing some diagrams that I know we had briefly mentioned that before. And now we can show a little bit more clearly that the process that we're building in the future, if we end up getting some agreements and have some ability to bring some food waste into our treatment plant for process, where we could actually be setting that up and how that could integrate into our system. So it wouldn't be something that we'd have to build an entirely new set of infrastructure, but rather just add on to and feed into our current system. And, you know, it would be an upgrade and some other work we'd have to do, but we are actively planning in this project for that potential expansion in the future. But first, we need to get through this major project and make sure everything works properly before we start on the next project.
Sounds good to me. Director Weiner, any comments?
No, just that I guess we're gonna have to borrow more money.
As long as we improve our operations, you know, that's what it takes sometimes, especially with all the, you know, delayed infrastructure work not we did, but the previous boards did. So, you know, I think that's a fair, even change or even exchange for what we need to do. Okay, next item, please.
Thank you. Last item, adjournment.
Oh, my favorite part. Adjournment. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the
We'll see you next
everybody.
week at the meeting.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.